What are the best accessories in Rise of Kingdoms? This is a question that I have seen a ton over the years, and it makes sense because, as you can see, accessories are some of the most expensive pieces of equipment to craft on your entire account, and so it is absolutely critical that you do not make any mistakes here because it can get really expensive to fix them. So today I'm bringing you the ultimate guide to accessories in Rise of Kingdoms, starting from brand new players all the way through players who have been in the end game for years now, and by the end of this video you guys are going to be able to make the correct decision for your account. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a sponsored partner creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, drop a thumbs up on the video and use the new hype feature on mobile. It really does help out the channel a ton, and I want to thank everybody who's been subscribing lately. We just hit 97,000 subscribers, which means we are so close to 100k. So if you haven't subbed already, go ahead and do that now as well. With that being said, let's jump right in here, guys, because accessories are the pieces of equipment that I see players question the most when they are building their accounts, when they're commenting on YouTube videos, when they're talking about this in Discord. Accessories get a lot of attention, and the first thing we have to touch on in this video is that while legendary accessories like the ring and the horn get all of the attention and all of the hype when it comes to online discussion, it's actually more important that you get the majority of your equipment to legendary first before you get your accessories to legendary themselves. Now, I'm not saying that legendary accessories should be the last thing you craft on your account, but they definitely are near the tail end of your priorities because of how expensive they are, and also because they are frankly sort of micro optimizations for your account. Because consider this, right? If I'm using this set of equipment for open field PvP, then it doesn't really matter what the legendary accessories are on this commander because I don't have enough stats to compete with everybody else on the field. So even if I craft a Horn of Fury, which is objectively super strong even in the end game meta, it doesn't matter how much rage I get if I'm already dead, right? And that's kind of the point that I want to make here, where, like, yes, accessories are very important and they do move the needle, but only if you've already caught up to everybody else on the battlefield. Now, again, I don't want to say that the accessories are the last thing you should craft, and by that I mean legendary accessories, but you do want a majority of your other equipment slots to be legendary before focusing on the legendary accessories themselves, for two reasons. Number one is iconic crystals or iconic tiers. Once you get legendary equipment, you can actually use an iconic crystal to give yourself more base stats, okay? And that is very critical because base stats are what are multiplied by all of these other percentages, right? If you look right here, it says infantry defense plus 11%. Well, what is the percentage, right? Well, it's actually a percentage of your troops base stats, and you can find that out by going into your troop training buildings and clicking the little eye right here. These are your base stats. The green numbers are what you're getting from all of your buildings, technology, and all this other stuff, and then you're getting even more base stats when you get iconic tier 1 on your legendary equipment. Okay, so TLDR, the higher this number is, the greater the effect of everything on your account that is a percentage based increase, and that's one of the biggest reasons why legendary equipment is superior to a lot of the purple and blue equipment. It's not necessarily that it has better stats, even though a majority of the time that is the case. It's mainly that you've got iconic tiers and you will eventually progress much farther than the purple or blue equipment could possibly give you. So I would say you want at least 4 or 5 of your pieces of equipment to be legendary with iconic crystals before you start considering converting your epic accessories to legendary accessories. Okay, so now that you understand sort of the priority order with which you should be focusing on legendary accessories, let's talk about what accessories you should focus on in the early game, and that's of course going to involve elite and epic accessories. And there's a couple of key things to point out here. Okay, when it comes to the blue accessories, 2 out of 3 of them are purely for PvE. The Savage Totem and Lohar's Bone Necklace, these are incredible for PvE content, that is barbarians, barbarian forts, things of that nature, but these don't do anything in PvP when you're fighting other players, right? Player versus player, so don't worry about that at all. The only blue or elite accessory worth talking about here is Call of the Loyal, which gives you a march speed bonus. This is 5% with a special talent that becomes 6.5% march speed, and frankly, this accessory is super underrated, and the reason for that is because, first of all, it is a blue or elite accessory, which means it's super cheap to craft, it's super cheap to get the special inscription on it, and universal march speed is actually incredibly relevant in both the early game and in the end game. So having at least one of these on your your account, especially for infantry and archers, is super good, because even in the end game you're going to be glad that you have extra march speed here. So is this end game PvP meta? No, but can you use it in the end game and have tangible results? Absolutely. And the last thing that I want to touch on here with Call of the Loyal, but this also extends to the purple accessories or the epic accessories that we're going to talk about in a minute, is that everything below legendary tier, okay, so the blues and the purples, you can dismantle these for a full refund of the materials used. Okay, so you don't get the blueprints back and you don't get the gold back, but you do get all of the materials, and then you can use those materials to upgrade to whatever the next piece of equipment or the next accessory is going to be. Because as you can see, Call of the Loyal, dismantling it gives me 70 blue materials and forging it costs me 70 blue materials. Okay, so it is a 100% refund, so there's just no downside. Craft this as soon as you're ready, and then once you're ready to upgrade, you can dismantle it and use those materials immediately. Now when it comes to the epic accessories, there are clear winners here. Okay, and the number one accessory here is Silent Trial. It's not even close. This says whenever the wearer's troop launches any type of basic attack, the target loses 10 rage. When you get the special talent here, that is a 13 rage reduction. And it's also worth noting that combo attacks count as basic attacks here, just like they always do. We talk about this in all my videos where we discuss combo commanders. So if you put this on a commander with combo attack damage, such as basically any endgame cavalry commander like King Arthur, like Achilles, Genghis Khan, whatever, or if you slap this on your Liu Che March who has combo attacks on the expertise, you're going to get even more value here because you're going to have more chances to proc this. Okay, there is no cooldown here, there is no cap, there is just anytime there's a basic attack, the target loses rage. And this is super powerful, especially for an epic accessory, because as you guys know, rage reduction in Rise of Kingdoms occurs after the target has already gained the maximum amount of rage for that turn. Okay, so if you guys didn't know, there is a rage cap in Rise of Kingdoms. I believe it's 220 rage per turn, but you guys can correct me in the comments. It's been a really long time since I've thought about rage cap, but the exact number is not super important for this discussion. My point is, no matter how much rage the enemy gains in a turn, it's capped at a certain level, and then rage reduction is calculated following that. Okay, so there's no amount of rage gain that can compensate for the amount of rage that you can reduce from your enemy. Silent Trial is just another source of that, and it's very reliable, very dependable. Every single turn you're chipping away the enemy's rage. This is absolutely the best epic accessory in the game, hands down. Now I do want to touch on Delane's amulet. This is actually pretty good in the early game, especially for more tanky commanders. Near the end game, however, it doesn't really do very much. I mean, 5% counterattack damage taken reduction, that doesn't really move the needle. In the end game, the proportion of damage that you take as an army that is from counterattack damage is like less than 10%. It's probably less than 5% at this point. It is very, very minuscule. A vast majority of the damage that you're going to be taking in the open field comes from active skills. Okay, so skill damage, smite damage, combo damage. Counterattack damage is not stuff that you're going to take very often, so reducing it by only 5% is really not the move. This works decent in the early game and it absolutely falls off in the late game. Definitely not something I would consider using in the end game, but there are two other epic accessories that I would consider using depending on the situation. First of all, if you are using infantry commanders, then the Wind Scars is fantastic. This is literally just a better version of the Call of the Loyal, especially if you can get the special talent here. Very good use on infantry, but infantry exclusively, and this does not work for anybody else. Honestly, in 2026, I almost wish that they would just change this to universal march speed. That's just me though. I would really love if this were an archer accessory as well. If I could use this on archers, that would be great. But if you aren't running infantry, let's say you're running cavalry or archers, then you're looking at ancient stratagems. Ancient stratagems is just a unit capacity increase. This just makes you bring more troops to the battlefield, and that is kind of a double-edged sword, which is kind of funny. You see there's two blades on the front of the book here, and that is because one, more troops in your army means more damage dealt. However, conversely, the more troops that you have, the more troops you can send to the hospital, right? So it is high risk, high reward. That being said, I typically look at this as just more damage, right? Also 3%, that's not anything crazy. It's not going to break the bank on your hospital bill, but it does let you squeeze out a little bit more damage. Okay, so in the early game and in conclusion, a majority of your armies should be running either Silent Trial with Call of the Loyal, Silent Trial with the Wind Scars, or Silent Trial with Ancient Stratagems. Those are the best combinations combinations depending on if you want extra march speed, if you want extra troops in the army. But no matter what, you want silent trial here. This is very, very good. And like I said, all of these pieces of equipment can be dismantled for a full refund on the materials used, right? This is 70 epic materials, and if we dismantle that, it will give me back 70 epic materials. Okay, now that we've covered all of the best accessories in the early game and the things that you're going to put on your armies to kind of hold you over until you can craft those legendary accessories, now let's talk about the best end game accessories in Rise of Kingdoms. And I think the best way to do this would be for me to just give you my thoughts and opinions on every accessory here, because I know there's going to be people in the comments saying, okay, well, what about this, or what about that, or can I use this? So let me just cover everything here. And I think the best place to start would be with the newest legendary accessories that have been added to Rise of Kingdoms, because these are the ones that I think players are going to have questions about the most. Let's talk about the Saddle of 1,000 Blessings. It says this wearer's troop deals 3% more smite damage of all types. Whenever it deals any type of smite damage, it has a 50% chance to heal itself for 5% of the slight wounds inflicted by the damage. So the more damage you deal, the more that you're actually healing here, but it is a chance to heal yourself with no cooldown. This piece of equipment is frankly not super good. I think the main use case for Saddle of 1,000 Blessings is if you are using an infantry garrison that you do not want to die, but you don't necessarily care that much about the trade. Okay, because historically a ton of healing in a garrison often will skew the results towards the rally in terms of the actual trade, right? And it makes sense logically. The more troops you're healing, the more troops you're bringing back to the battle, the more troops that can die, right? And so that's typically what happens when you've got tons of healing in the garrison. That's not always the case, right? Like Zenobia, for example, was meta for a long time, and with her kit the way that she was built, it did actually work out in her favor often. So that's why I'm saying that Saddle of 1,000 Blessings might be great for garrisons where you don't necessarily care about the trade, but you really care about the outcome, right? You don't want to lose the flag, you don't want it to be burned. So things like Kingsland, right? Like that would be a situation where you might want to use Saddle of 1,000 Blessings. But besides that, I don't really see a great use for the saddle. And even still, even in that scenario, you might have better things that you could use. Now, that's not to say that Saddle of 1,000 Blessings is going to be something you skip forever, right? I mean, there could certainly be commanders that come down the pipeline that utilize this, right? But one of the problems is that it says you deal 3% more smite damage, right? But we have accessories like the Greatest Glory, which give you 5% more normal damage. Okay, so this is not only is it more damage, but it's both your basic attacks and your smite damage, right? So the white numbers every single turn are benefited from this as well, not just your smite damage, right? So even out of the gate from a damage perspective, this thing kind of falls short. So really what you would want here is to use it for the healing, and you just don't really have enough procs of smite damage to justify the healing. The opportunity cost here is just way too high. Next, let's talk about Hero's Hilt. It says whenever the wearer's troop launches any type of combo attack, it has a 50% chance to gain a 3% bonus to all types of combo attack damage for 5 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. So you can get up to 15% more combo attack damage if you get it fully stacked, which sounds incredible until you consider that really with the way that you're going in and out of combat all the time in Rise of Kingdoms, it might take longer than you expect to get this fully stacked up. So this is definitely a better piece than something like the Saddle of 1,000 Blessings, definitely stronger, definitely better in things that are longer engagement, right? Like rallying garrisons. But again, we also have to consider that we've got things like the Ring of Doom and the Greatest Glory, especially the Greatest Glory, that are just a little bit more reliable when it comes to consistent damage increase, right? Because again, this is exclusively combo attack damage, whereas this is normal damage. Okay, so this covers again your white numbers and the combo attack damage. Now, one thing I will say about Hero's Hilt, if we ever see a combo cavalry commander that functions similar to Emperor Qin, and by that I mean Emperor Qin converts his basic attacks into skill damage, right? So every turn he's dealing skill damage. If we ever see that for cavalry where they convert their basic attacks into combo attacks, so every single turn is a combo attack, then first of all, that's going to be broken, right? Because you're going to proc crazy amounts of things all the time, right? But on top of that, Hero's Hilt becomes insanely good in that situation. Okay, so Hero's Hilt, again, if I were to use it, I would probably point you towards more of a rally garrison use case rather than open field, unless we do see a commander like Emperor Qin come down the pipeline for cavalry combo damage specifically, in which case this thing will probably be absolutely absolutely broken. Next, let's talk about Immolating Plume. This is very straightforward, but this is literally just for ranged combat, and so this is very simple. If you're using a ranged army, this is best in slot. This is the best thing you can use. If you're not, you will never even consider crafting this, so it's kind of an open and shut case. Moving on to Scolas Lucky Coin. Whenever the wearer's troop is hit with any type of basic attack, it has a 10% chance to gain a damage absorbing shield for 2 seconds with a damage factor of 500 with a cooldown of 5 seconds. Scolas Lucky Coin was, if I remember correctly, the first ever legendary accessory in Rise of Kingdoms. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. Maybe it landed in the game along with other legendary accessories. This used to be a KVK victory reward, which, like, if you won KVK you got the lucky coin. Now it's just in the season shop. Okay, so it's kind of funny how the coin has changed over the years. I tell you this to say that back in the day, Scolas Lucky Coin was decent because it had no competition, but now it is absolutely garbage, pretty much. I mean, think about it. It's a 10% chance to occur when you're hit with a basic attack. Okay, so this doesn't even proc unless you're getting hit already, and you don't want to be hit in the open field. You want to get away if you're being swarmed. Okay, and then on top of that, there's a cooldown of 5 seconds, and the damage factor of the shield is tiny for 2026 meta. Furthermore, this isn't even a mighty shield, it's a regular shield, so this is like one of the weakest shields in the entire game. All that being said, Scolas Lucky Coin has aged like absolute milk. This is something that you might consider in a garrison or perhaps in Sunset Canyon, but really it's just not good. Do not use the Scolas Lucky Coin. It has aged horribly, and it will continue to age worse, by the way, because damage factors in the game continue to go up, and this is stuck at a solid 500. Unless they rework this entirely, this will never be meta, unless there's some commander that does something absolutely broken with shields that we've never seen before. But right now, do not craft that. Next, let's talk about Mora's Web. Whenever the wearer's troop launches any type of basic attack, it has a 30% chance to reduce the target defense by 4% and the march speed of the target's cavalry units by 8%. Stacks up to 3 times. Each stack lasts for 3 seconds. Mora's Web kind of suffers from a similar fate as Scolas Lucky Coin. Back in the day, Mora's Web was okay. It was never really meta, but it was something that, like, all right, maybe you want 1 in a 7 army lineup in case you end up swarming a flag or fortress, or maybe you want something just to snare those cavalry in the field. But because the debuff is a static 4%, it's linear instead of exponential, this has gotten worse every single year since it landed in the game, and it's never even come close to returning to the meta. And think about it, right? When Mora's Web came in the game, we had commanders like Nebu who had 30% defense, 15% march speed, and that was all of the stats they had in the open field. That was it. 30% of stats was the meta back in the day, right? And you can even look at commanders like an infantry commander, for example. Back in the day, Guan Yu was field meta. He only had 30% attack, right? And that was it for the open field. That was all of his stats. You look at commanders like Richard, they had 30% of stats, right? That was the field meta back in the day. And so when you look at something like, you know, Mora's Web, it's like, okay, you're reducing 4% of defense, and, you know, all you ever had was 30% of stats total, plus of course your equipment and technology and stuff. But now you look at commanders, what is the current meta these days? Sun Tzu Prime is considered the top of the meta. He has 50% of stats on this skill, and he has 20% of stats. Okay, so we have 70% of stats. The open field meta has doubled in the amount of stats you have on your commanders alone, and Mora's Web has not changed, right? It's effectively half as good as it used to be, and it wasn't even that good to begin with, and the opportunity cost is even higher because of how much better some of the other accessories are in 2026, which we'll talk about in a second. And everything that we just touched on for Mora's Web applies to Concealed Dagger as well. Okay, Concealed Dagger is reducing health by a 5% mark instead of 4% defense. So this back in the day was slightly better. You lose the march speed reduction for cabs, but even still, this was great for swarming flags, fortresses, and things like that. But these days, there's really no room for a Concealed Dagger in a 7 army lineup, let alone a 3-4-5 army lineup, right? It's just not meta. It's only gotten worse over the years, right? It's just not good. Okay, so simply don't craft these are not good accessories, period. In the same vein as that is Seth's Call. This says whenever you launch a basic attack, it has a 10% chance to grant a 10% attack bonus to the wearer's troop and 2 nearby allied troops for 3 seconds with a 3-second cooldown. Okay, so again, this is a little bit better because we're talking about 30% of stats. However, like I said, in the current meta in 2026, commanders have 70% of stats. That's kind of the minimum, right? Some commanders have like 40 to 45% of stats depending on where they are in the meta, but really, like, this has only gotten gotten worse every single year since it came out, strictly because everything else in the game got stronger, Seth's call stayed the same, and the opportunity cost got even higher. Next, let's talk about Vengeance. And I think Vengeance is in a super interesting situation because it is extremely niche, to the point where frankly I can't recommend anybody craft the Vengeance. It just doesn't make any sense. Really, the only time you would use the Vengeance accessory is for situations where you want maximum anti-swarm capabilities. So whether that's a counter rally or a tanking rally, or if you really want to punish somebody for swarming a flag or fortress, the Vengeance works really well there, and it scales no matter how many troops are hitting you, right? So if you're swarmed by 10 different armies, that's 80% more counterattack damage, right? You're dealing 8% more to every single army that's hitting you. So that's the one situation where Vengeance is outperforming some of the other accessories that you might consider using. But again, this is really only for rally garrison, because in the open field, if you're swarmed 10-1, guess what? You're already dead, right? So the Vengeance really, it doesn't have really any place in the open field meta unless you're doing like a cheeseburgering strategy where you're popping out of the city with like a Charles Martel with something like Pakal or something to try to get as much counterattack damage as possible. That's not even really what we see from cheeseburger marches anymore. A lot of people are just running Liu Che with Philip, or Liu Che with Alex, or maybe even Emperor Qin with YSG, right? So there's lots of different cheeseburgering marches. One of those strategies involves counterattack damage, and it's not even the most popular strategy, I would say, these days. So the Vengeance is definitely better than some of the other accessories we've talked about because it does actually have a functional use in 2026, but that use case is extremely niche, and so a vast majority of players should not be crafting a Vengeance at this point. Next, let's talk about Karuak's war drums, because this is an accessory that I see a lot of people have varying opinions on. Some people think that this is one of the best accessories in the entire game and that you should be running like 5 of these on your account to maximize its benefit. Other players don't really see that much value there, and they would rather run maybe up to 1 of them in a 7 army lineup. So let me give you guys my sort of take on Karuak's war drums, because really neither person is wrong in that scenario. The war drums are actually incredibly good, and they don't really suffer from the same problems that we saw from other accessories like the coin, like the dagger, like the web, because war drums say whenever the wearer's troop launches any type of basic attack, it has a 10% chance to grant 50 extra rage to itself and up to 2 nearby allied troops with a 3-second cooldown. So rage is what you use to cast your active skills in Rise of Kingdoms, and your active skills are where like 90% of your damage output comes from. And so as active skills get stronger and stronger and stronger, rage regeneration becomes more and more valuable, because back in the day, for 1,000 rage you would deal 2,000 damage factor to 1 target with a 2-second debuff, and today you're dealing 2,400 damage factor to 5 enemies. So the rage cost stayed the same, but the damage you deal with that rage expenditure is way higher. Okay, and as active skills continue to get stronger, which we know will be the case because power creep is inevitable in any game, especially Rise of Kingdoms, we know that war drums will always be part of the meta unless they add another accessory that's even better for rage regeneration, which we will talk about in a second, because we do have that debate between Horn of Fury and Karuak's war drums. That being said, however, it's also very important to understand that there's tons of different ways to get rage in Rise of Kingdoms, to the point where you can actually reliably hit your rage cap every single turn almost. So if we look at commanders like Emperor Qin, for example, he generates a ton of rage primarily because he functions off of rage consumed, and he starts the battle with up to 500 rage. But even if we look at commanders like Zhuge Liang, he has his own rage engine built into his kit. We look at commanders like YSG, he has rage engine built into his kit. We look at commanders like Liu Che with his expertise, he gains extra rage here, right? I almost forgot, but Sun Tzu Prime has his own rage gain as well here, which is kind of insane. So lots of the meta commanders in Rise of Kingdoms already have lots of ways to gain rage on top of their talents, right? Let's not forget that talents also give you rage very reliably, and that's not even to discuss the fact that lots of people are still running a William in their lineup, which gives you 50 rage per second for 3 seconds. Some people are even still running a Joan of Arc, which gives you 20 rage per second for 3 seconds. We've got Trajan, who really isn't part of the field meta, but with Vercingetorix coming around the corner, maybe he could see a return. And on top of that, Vercingetorix himself has an extra rage engine as well. And beyond commanders that just give rage, we also have commanders like Bai Qi who have bonuses to rage gain speed. We see commanders like Achilles who have bonuses to rage gain speed as well. Vercingetorix again is a commander that has rage gain speed. We saw Elizabeth I for ranged commanders has rage gain speed. Okay, so if we continue to see more commanders that have rage regeneration or rage gain speed, those armies are less likely to need the war drums because they're probably already hitting that rage cap. And like I said earlier when we talked about the silent trial, rage reduction occurs after you've already hit your rage cap, right? So if you look at commanders like King Arthur, for example, he has a skill that says you have a 30% chance to reduce all targets rage by 100 every second for 2 seconds. Okay, there's no way that you can gain enough rage to counteract that, right? Because this occurs after you've already hit your cap. So all of your skills proc, all of your rage is gained, you get all your rage, and then it's cut off at the cap, and then your rage is reduced by commanders like King Arthur. You've even got rage reduction on commanders as far back as Nebu, right? Like rage reduction is very common in the open field. And so the argument that like, okay, well, we might not need it necessarily because we're already getting rage from all these other scenarios, but we can use it in case our rage is reduced significantly, that logic does not work because that's not how it actually plays out in the battle formula. You hit your rage cap, then your rage is reduced. All that extra rage that you gained is just thrown in the garbage. It was a waste. So all of that being said, lots of commanders have their own way to gain rage or give rage to nearby allied armies, and we've seen a lot of new commanders have rage gain speed. And so in that scenario, having too many war drums in your lineup is literally just a waste. Like you're actually just wasting that accessory slot because you're giving rage to commanders that don't need it. They've already hit the rage cap. There's nothing you can do there, right? All of that being said, however, that does not mean that the war drums are bad or useless. They are actually still very good and certainly find their place in the current open field meta, because as much as rage gain and rage gain speed are common these days, they aren't on every march, and you can't guarantee that you'll always be the one to benefit from nearby, you know, William the First. And on top of that, commanders like William, Joan of Arc Prime, and Trajan especially are finding their way out of the meta right now. So we are losing that portion of rage gain. So there are still use cases for Karuak's war drums. Okay, so my opinion here is that first and foremost, Karuak's war drums should be used pretty much exclusively on combo cavalry armies or armies that are purely supportive in nature. Okay, so if you are still running an open field purely leadership march like with a Trajan, for example, Karuak's war drum should be on there, right? Because your sole purpose in the field is to support other armies. Your damage output does not matter, but the damage output of your allies does. Those armies deserve war drums. And again, the reason that combo cavs get war drums is because with combo attacks, you just have more chances to proc this, right? Especially if you have things like the butterfly effect special inscription as part of your delta formation, right? This just gives you a 20% more chance to trigger something off of a basic attack. Causative is also really nice. This is an extra 8%, right? So when you craft the war drums, those are the places that I would be using it. I would be using it on cavalry primarily, and then secondarily a purely supportive march. How many war drums should you have on your account? Well, I would say if you're running 5 armies in the open field, you probably want to have at least 1 war drums there. I think that's really good. Upwards of 2 depending on what other commanders you're using. If you're running 6 or 7 army lineup, then you almost certainly want at least 1 war drums, if not 2 or 3, right? I think 3 is kind of pushing it because really, I mean, you're giving rage to 3 commanders times 3 war drums. That's 9 benefits. So that actually extends beyond your total army capacity, right? You only have 7 armies, you're buffing 9, so you're just giving it to other allies, which is good, right? But if everybody on the field is running 3 war drums, then you're just wasting that benefit to some people. Now, these don't all proc in the same turn, and so like I get that there's, you know, cooldowns involved here, so like you're probably never gonna actually waste that rage, but my point is going beyond 3 I think is a little bit overkill. You might still see some benefit there, but you will certainly see some diminishing returns beyond that, in my opinion. So again, 5 army lineup, I would say 0 or 1 war drums is the play. 6 army lineup, you want 1 to 2 war drums, and a 7 army lineup, you want between 1 and 3 war drums. 2 or 3 is the sweet spot there. Next, let's talk about the Horn of Fury, because this is the one accessory that is compared most to Karuak's war drums, because on paper it looks like it does kind of the same thing, right? If you look at the war drums, 10% chance to give 150 rage, and this is a 30% chance to give 50 rage. And so you think, okay, well, the math should work out such that it's basically the same benefit, right? And that's kind of true, but really I prefer Horn of Fury over everything else. And the reason for that is because, first of all, it's a higher chance to occur. So straight up, you're just going to see the benefit more often. And on top of that, you have more control over what you're doing with your own armies, right? So in the case of the war war drums, it's possible that if you use the war drums, a nearby ally will gain the extra rage while they're running away. And if that's the case, then you kind of effectively have wasted that rage, right? I mean, if you give them rage and they're running back to their city, then you've done nothing. They're not going to use the rage. They're not going to cast an active skill. So you haven't done anything, right? With the Horn of Fury, you are in complete control of your own armies, and you will always get the benefit for your own army, right? So if you are fighting and you're hitting the enemy with your basic attacks, there's a good chance that you're going to be fighting until you at least cast an active skill, right? And so in the case of Horn of Fury, it's less frequent that you're going to be wasting the rage that you gain here. And again, with things like combo calves, which have an increased probability of casting things off basic attacks, you're just going to get the Horn of Fury more often. So I really like the Horn of Fury. It is one of the most reliable ways to increase the amount of rage any particular army is getting. And really, the Horn of Fury is pretty much at this point in time in 2026 the best accessory in the game. I mean, straight up, for all the reasons that we discussed with Karuak's war drums, with rage being more valuable now than it's ever been, you just get the most benefit of Horn of Fury without all of the downsides of war drums potentially giving rage to allies that are running away from the fight or are super low in health or whatever the case might be. Horn of Fury, in my opinion, and this is kind of like, I don't really know what else to say here, but like I said earlier, like Horn of Fury is almost objectively just the best accessory in the game when it comes to damage per second. It is super good, whether you're rally, whether you're garrison, whether you're open field. This is like the most universally used and loved accessory in the game, and it's been that way forever, and it's kind of only gotten better over time. There's really not much else to say there. Okay, now we've got 3 more accessories to talk about in this video, and these 3 are kind of like the trinity of just increasing your raw damage output. Okay, now for the longest time, the Ring of Doom was considered the best accessory in the game alongside the Horn of Fury. Typically, Horn and Ring were the accessories you would always see, right? This casts your active skills more, this gives you more all damage, and so it makes the most sense that this is the way to go. That has changed a little bit over the last year or two, and that is because we have smite damage and combo damage in the game now, and those scale off of normal damage. Okay, on top of that, we've got commanders like Emperor Qin who scale off of skill damage for all of their basic attacks, which is kind of insane. So now the math actually changes quite a bit, and I've talked about this in previous videos, but the Ring of Doom actually works a lot better in scenarios where battles go on for a long time. So again, a rally or garrison scenario, just like I talked about earlier with things like the hero's hilt, that's where you're going to find the most value out of Ring of Doom. Now, that being said, this is still a really good accessory for the open field because you have a chance of just getting 50% all damage. I mean, like, what are we talking about? That's super good. The downside of Ring of Doom is that it is a small percent chance to occur, and it can only trigger up to once every 5 seconds, and there's a chance that when you do proc this, you might lose the benefit because you could be running away or your enemy is running away. I mean, that is just the reality of the current open field PvP meta in Rise of Kingdoms. Is, you know, it's not as hit and run as it was like a year and a half ago, but it's still pretty hit and run, right? Like DPS is still through the roof, time to kill is still very fast. Okay, and so there's a good chance that some of your procs of the Ring of Doom will be wasted on either you running away or your enemy running away because you're just going in and out, pulling back when you overextend, etc. So in those scenarios, you lose the value here, whereas with things like the Greatest Glory for your infantry, you never have to worry about that, right? You get 5% every single turn at all times. So this is going to work for your basic attacks, your counter attacks. This is going to work for your active skill if it's smite or combo damage, whereas the Ring of Doom works basically 1 in 10 turns or 1 in 13 turns depending on the cooldown. It works for 2 turns consecutively, which is nice, but there's a lot of downsides there, right? Like I said, a majority of your damage comes from your active skill, and so if this isn't proccing during the active skill windows, then you are losing a lot of value there when it comes to the overall math, which is why I said, you know, because of law of averages, the Ring of Doom actually works really well in long exchanges, but for shorter fights, for skirmishes, or for in and out combat, things like the Greatest Glory actually will probably outperform in those situations. And just to sort of illustrate what I mean here, I did this math quite a while ago at this point, and I do apologize if you're watching this at night. I probably just flashbanged you with this all white screen. Okay, but if we compare the Ring of Doom to Greatest Glory in terms of how many turns it would take to break even or do better, we see that if you're fighting for more than 7 turns consecutively, then on average the Ring of Doom is going to be better. If you're fighting for less than 7 turns consecutively, then the Greatest Glory is going to be better. Okay, and that's because the ring has a 10% chance of occurring, so that means on average you're going to proc it once every 10 10 turns, and it occurs for 2 turns consecutively, and it has a 5-second cooldown. And so the whole cycle is a 15 turn cycle, and so the uptime is 13.3%, 2 out of 15. And this is if you have a special talent, by the way, at 65%. But for those of you that don't have that, like majority of my marches, it would be even lower here, right? Like this is what a majority of you are going to be experiencing. But again, remember that this is assuming the best case scenario for the Ring of Doom, and by that I mean that it procs while you're staying connected to your target, and they're not running away, and you're not running away, and you're not losing that 2 turns of value there, right? On top of that, again, the Greatest Glory is always going to work for your active skills, whereas the Ring of Doom may not. And so that's kind of where a lot of the discussion falls here. And so if you're a player that just goes all in, you never retreat, you're always diving, you're always staying connected, then okay, the Ring of Doom is probably going to be better for you in the long run on average. But if you're a player that plays kind of normally like the rest of us, right, like where you're fighting until you get targeted, then you return back, and then you go back, if you're doing that in and out combat, then on average over time you probably will see a better return from the Greatest Glory. And like I said, this math changes if you're doing Rally Garrison. Rally Garrison, you almost certainly would prefer Ring of Doom. There's also the case of cavalry commanders have, again, a higher proc chance here, because if you have combo attacks plus you have butterfly effect, right, like let's say you reduce the average number of turns before it procs to 9, that bumps this up, again assuming you have the special talent. Let's take the talent away because a lot of you guys don't have it, but you can see that that meaningfully increases the amount of damage, right? Again, this is a 10 turn cycle, and this is a 9 turn cycle. If you cast it every 8 turns, that's kind of how that works. Okay, so I just want to share with you guys the math here. It is very close on average, right? If you're using with a non-combo commander and you don't have a special talent in any situation, they are very close, in which case the Greatest Glory is simply just safer, right? You don't have to think about it, just use the Greatest Glory. It's the better option. I guess I should turn off the special talent for that as well. I apologize, but I think you guys get the point. Okay, the Greatest Glory are safer, and it might perform better on average if you lose a lot of the value from Ring of Doom, so keep that in mind. And all of that math extends to the Pendant of Eternal Night as well, as long as we're talking about Emperor Qin. Okay, and the reason that Emperor Qin is the differentiating factor here is because he converts all of his basic attacks into direct damage factor, which is skill damage. So that means for Emperor Qin specifically, this is basically an all damage bonus, right? I mean, that's really what it is. 6.5% if it's got the special talent there for archers. Pendant of Eternal Night is meta only for Emperor Qin. For everybody else, they're going to want the Ring of Doom most likely, because this just works for all types of damage, skill damage, normal damage, counterattack damage, whatever. This only would work on your active skills, except for Emperor Qin, who it works for every turn. All right, so with that being said, now that we've gone over literally every single accessory in Rise of Kingdoms, what are the best accessories in the game? Okay, well, like I said before, if you are running smite damage infantry and you're only fighting in the open field, then your best combinations are Horn of Fury with Greatest Glory or Horn of Fury with Ring of Doom. I think on average these are going to average out to be very similar over time. Greatest Glory is just safer, right? So that's what I would consider. If we're talking about Emperor Qin specifically, then his best pairings are right now Zhuge Liang or YSG, both of which who have a rage engine. And so because of that, your best equipment for Emperor Qin specifically is going to be the Pendant of Eternal Night or the Ring of Doom. Okay, now in the future, if he does end up pairing with a commander that does not have a rage engine built in, or whatever the case might be, we'll have to redo the testing with different talent builds and things like that to see if we can compensate. If we can't, then of course his best accessories are going to be Horn of Fury with Pendant or Horn of Fury with Ring of Doom. When we talk about cavalry have a couple of different options. I think cavalry definitely want the Horn of Fury, right, because it does proc more with combo damage. And then this is where you would put your war drums. Okay, now stacking both of these on the same march, I mean, you could do it. You're going to be overraging most likely some turns. More than likely though, what you could do would be something like a war drums with a ring or a war drums with a Greatest Glory, again if it's combo damage. But I do really like Ring of Doom here because combo damage does proc more often here for the Ring of Doom, so that's going to pull your average damage over time up, and that decreases the sort of downside of that RNG factor of the Ring of Doom by a little bit. Not crazy, but certainly it moves the needle. So again, for calves, either ring and horn if you don't have the war drums, or again you could do Greatest Glory and horn if you wanted to. But like I said, if you do have any war drums, you're going to want them on calves for sure. And then if we're talking Rally Garrison, maybe you would consider something like Hero's Hilt for cavalry, and maybe you would consider Vengeance for like an anti-swarm uniform situation, but that's again really I just would not point people in that direction. Now the final thing we have to talk about in this video is the equipment reset event, which we did actually get a couple of months ago, and we did hear at the recent Vietnam in-person meetup that the developers might be considering having that be a yearly thing. That is not confirmed, that is not set in stone. I'm not sitting here telling you that that is guaranteed to happen, but it is a non-zero chance. Okay, we could be seeing a periodic equipment reset event come to the game, and I would assume that it would arrive in the game no sooner than once per year. Okay, so if they do return that event, it will be at maximum once per year. I do not see them doing it more than that. I don't think that they would do that just because of economy reasons in terms of player investment and things like that. Like the older players would just have such an advantage. It's kind of crazy, right? But I do think that they are floating the idea of returning it periodically, in which case the fastest we would see it is once per year. So if that is the case, okay, and you do have some of the accessories here that I said are not meta or probably won't continue to be meta in the future, then don't worry, you might have a chance to dismantle it and get all of your materials back at a gem cost. I did cover that extensively on my channel already, so if you want more information about the equipment reset event, go ahead and check that out on the channel. But with that being said, guys, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, please consider dropping a thumbs up on it. It really does help out the channel a ton, and if you're on mobile, use the new hype feature. It really does help me beat the YouTube algorithm. Hopefully you found this video informative or entertaining, and let me know in the comment section below what you think about all of these accessories. Do you agree with what the best accessories are? Do you disagree? Are there things that I missed? Let me know in the comment section below, and while you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload Rise of Kingdoms content. We just hit 97,000 subscribers, so we are so close to 100k, and you might think you're subscribed because you've seen a ton of my videos or you subbed in the past, but you're actually not. YouTube unsubscribes you after some amount of time, so just double check that you're subbed down below. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.